I've been a broadcaster at FBI for getting on 13 years now. I was asked to do 6 months here in September of 2003. I'm still here. For the last probably 9, I have lost count, the last 9 of those years here at FBI Radio, I've done a program which is very popular called Tune Up. Tune Up it allows me to indulge my love of cover versions, reworkings, and reinterpretations of songs. I don't like cover versions where they're just straight ahead imitations of the original, but when people take a song and they completely strip it down, rework it, rebuild it, and almost create a different song, that's what I love. And there's a lot of songs that I kind of think I never ever want to hear again, and then I hear someone dissect the song and redo it, and I'm going, okay, gee, I mean, a case in point recently was Lionel Richie's All Night Long. Now, most people have heard Lionel Richie's All Night Long enough, unless you're a real Lionel Richie fan. And I was one of those people that had heard it enough. And then a band from Tucson called South San Gabriel did an almost 9-minute out in the desert, hot, stripped back, guitar-driven version of All Night Long by Lionel Richie. Not only is it amazing, it made me realise what a great song All Night Long actually is, what a great bit of songwriting it is, and so that's a classic case in point. So yeah, Tune Up is just that. When I proposed the idea to FBI, they said, do you have enough cover versions to do the show for 6 months? I said, I can play nothing but Bob Dylan cover versions without repeating one and do the show for 10 years without duplicating one song. There were that many Bob Dylan covers. So I never run out of cover versions. The show that I've just finished doing today was an hour of dub and reggae and ska cover versions, which is always the show I do when I've been working really hard and I haven't had time to think because the songs are really, really long. So that's what I do, and what I'm doing, because I'm well and truly the oldest presenter by a long shot at FBI. Where Tune Up functions within a youth radio network, because FBI broadcasts principally to, it's targeted at 18 to 25-year-olds, neither of which I am. But what I try to do with Tune Up is take contemporary artists and show through their cover versions what music they've listened to, what they've grown up with, what has shaped their listening. So in the case of, for instance, Sufjan Stevens, contemporary artist, very popular on FBI, popular with an FBI listenership, over the last few weeks I've played him singing the Beatles, him singing Joni Mitchell, him singing Arthur Russell, and a whole bunch of other cover versions that he's done. And so that enables me to tell a little bit of a story about the history of popular music and put it in a context where someone who wasn't born when that Joni Mitchell song came out has believe it or not, there are a generation who have very little knowledge of who the Beatles were. So you're actually taking them via Sufjan Stevens back to stuff that I obviously think is very important musically. So that's a little bit of a journey.
That's great. And I just wanted to cover as well, if you don't mind.
No.
I read that you were the manager of the Hoodoo and Paul Kelly, who are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
If you're going to, can you tell me about that, and also if what advice you could offer people who are looking at managing?
Advice for people thinking of managing bands: don't do it.
I somehow thought you were going to say.
Yeah, no, look, I've done lots of things. I've been a concert tour promoter, I've been a publicist. I've done a lot of band management. I've always thought it's important to learn as much as you possibly can about all facets of the music industry. And my work managing artists has fueled what I do with radio, what I do with my record label, what I do with my writing. I'd never managed a band until my neighbours, who were calling themselves the Hoodoo Gurus, came around to my house in Woolloomooloo one morning and said, "Stuart, we've all had our phones disconnected." It's true. And they said, "You seem to like being on the phone because we can see you talking on the phone every day when we walk past your front window. Can we give you," literally, this is a true story, they said, "can we give you $10 a week to be our phone contact and our manager?" And $10 was kind of a lot of money when you were, a weekly salary in those days was about 120. And so I said yes, and within 6 months, 8 months, we had the Stone Age Romeos album out. It was a #1 college radio record in America. I was literally sitting down with Jerry Moss and Herb Albert. Herb Albert being a famous trumpet player from Two on a Brass. Jerry Moss, they were the A&M and A&M Records in Los Angeles. We did an American tour where we did 42 shows in 44 days. We started in Los Angeles, we drove to Boston, via Chicago and Kansas City and St. Louis. We turned and went to New York, and then we turned around and came back, playing pretty much every night. By the end of that, they hated me, I hated them. We parted ways, we're still friends. And at the same time as that was happening, Paul Kelly, who had been the very first interview I'd ever done in 1976, Paul and I had been friends, or built up a friendship. I'd written a lot about his first 2 records. He was out of a deal with Mushroom Records. He had taken the infamous trip from St Kilda to King's Cross, which is 13 hours on a bus. He called me up and said, "Do you want to have a meeting?" And I said, "Sure, what are you thinking of doing?" He said, "I've saved up $1,500 to make an acoustic single." I said, "You're nuts. No one will buy an acoustic single by you." Took him back to my house in Bondi, played him acoustic albums by Chris Bailey and Johnny Thunders. Excuse me, cold. And I said, "Let's find another $1,500 and make an album," and that was Post. Then I renegotiated his deals with Mushroom Records. He recorded Gossip, which is the double album, which had Before Too Long, Darling It Hurts, and so on. And we were back in Los Angeles with A&M Records very quickly and touring America. And I did Paul for Post, Gossip, Under the Sun, and So Much Water, So Close to Home. What did that teach me? Management, it's exciting. Look, it's thrilling. When you get a hit record, when you walk out, or you're standing side of stage and watching, your artist playing to 7,000 or 8,000 people, of course, it's beyond exciting. It's probably the most thankless job in the music industry. Artists will give you 100 things to do in a day. You will magnificently succeed at doing 99 of the 100, and then they'll want to fire you because you didn't get to number 100. It's like running a 24-hour-a-day child minding centre. It's a precarious, it's fun. The main thing that you learn is it is a business. The business is so important. I always say to everyone I work with now, both record label or when I still quasi-manage acts, no one fights over $100, but everyone fights over $100,000. Everyone agrees on who wrote the song when you're sitting in a rehearsal room, banging it out. Everyone will have a selective memory when it's gone to #1 and there's $100,000 involved. Everyone will have written the majority of the lyrics. Everyone will have written the majority of the medley. Write it down, put it in the filing cabinet, hope you never go and look at it ever again. So it's a thankless task. My friends, we all joke that there are only 2 types of managers. Those that have been fired and those that are about to be fired.
Can I ask you, Stuart, do you feel that Australian artists have to make it overseas before they're even recognised in their own country?
No, they used to. In the 1980s, late 1970s and 1980s, you need to have the sort of, particularly success in the UK and be anointed by NME and so forth, which is why the Birthday Party and the Moodists and, the Go-Betweens and dozens and dozens of other bands all went to the UK. They never went to America. No, it doesn't matter now. It's important to have success overseas if you're going to make any money, because you can't tour in Australia. I mean, you can do 200 dates in America or Europe in a year and not go to the same city. Now, you know, and I got friends who are in bands that do that. But in Australia, you know, there's only so many times you can go up and down the East Coast. And then you think you've got a bit of money, so you go to Adelaide and Perth and lose it. So, you know, there's very few artists that can sustain, and they tend to be country artists, that can sustain that extended regional touring. You know, Casey Chambers can play 100, 150 shows in Australia and never go back to the same place if she wants to. Most rock and roll bands can't. But to have the success in this, no, I mean, I think we're going through a phase at the moment when we're particularly proud of what comes out of this country, and we've stopped looking for overseas validation that things are good. You know, everyone agrees on Courtney Barnett at the moment, as they should, and we're all delighted that she's been accepted overseas to the level she is. But I think, unlike years gone by, there is an Australian consciousness that says we love Courtney Barnett or Tame Impala or Pond or whoever it happens to be, because they're Australian and because they're great, not necessarily in that order, and we're delighted that overseas people are loving them as much as we do too, but we're not loving them because overseas people are telling us that they're great, and that's a nice change.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to hold you up.
No, you're right.
So do you have anything else?
No.
But thank you so much.
That's my pleasure.
I mean, I'm so privileged.
I know, it's all right. It's what we do. I know you've seen FBI.
Yes.
On TV, on the radio, we're out there.
Yeah.
The very famous TV on the radio.
I'm glad
They were playing at the Opera House tonight.